Hello, and welcome to the Camp Corner. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Hannah, and she is a member of our board. She's going to tell us a little bit about herself, about her role at camp, and why she loves Lakeside so much. Let's go meet Hannah.
Hi. Great. So to get started, tell us about you. Who is Hannah?
So who is Hannah? Well, it's a very long question, so I'll try and be succinct on that one. But I am born and raised Iowan. I am, I guess, first and foremost, a child of God. Grew up in the church. My dad's a pastor, retired now. And I am a book lover. And as you can tell, this is just like my office of books. The other side is completely full too and piled everywhere. I don't have enough shelves in my life. And I also am a wife, and I am a mother of twins, two 5-year-old boys. I too am felt a call later in life to become a pastor, and so I also serve a small rural congregation in southeast Minnesota now. So though born and raised in Iowa, since I graduated college, and I moved to Minnesota with my best friend and have lived here ever since. And that's been now 15 years that I'm pretty, solid Minnesotan now. So good Midwestern girl for sure. But yeah, that's kind of, I don't know, the crux of it, I guess. I don't know.
Awesome. I love that.
Those are my labels. How about that? Those are my labels of who I am.
Good way of putting it. All the boxes you fit in.
let's pick our boxes. Here we go. But yeah.
Yes. I love that you said first and foremost you're a child of God. I love that.
Well, I'm working on it as well. I think in our society it's hard to kind of claim that. We're not, even as young Christians, I don't think we're really taught that as our core identity. And for me, as my faith journey has progressed, and now as I do baptize, that baptismal identity has become, it's become so much more intimate now that I participate in it in a much more intimate way over and over and over again. And I long for us all to kind of be able to share that more widely as a community, and for us to kind of claim those things as a community. But
that's really cool. So I've always found that the question, tell me about yourself, really interesting, because a lot of times when people ask that question, the first thing they'll say is what their occupation is, or, where, or, and it's just like these very, to me, impersonal things. And I don't think we mean it to be that way, because the first thing that comes to our mind, but a lot of times when I ask the question, I really want to know, who are you? What makes you you? And so I love that you were like, I'm a child of God. I'm like, yeah, that's what makes it so awesome. I love it.
I know. It is a really tough question. Because I do think the reason, the boxes, right? We're trying to set ourselves into our society's contexts. And those are the things that help us place ourselves. For somebody who doesn't know you, here are some places to help place their experiences. Right. It is so impersonal in so many ways, because even because we might sit in the same boxes, we haven't had the same experience, and we're not the same people. And so wanting to actually get into that a little bit deeper of who are you? What do you care about? What makes you happy? What makes you tick? What upsets you?
Awesome. Very cool. So about camp. So tell me about your first experience at Lakeside.
Well, technically, I can't remember my first experience at Lakeside. I was not 1 year old the first time I went to Lakeside. I had been born in December, and my family went for the first time the year after I was born in 1982. Yeah, that'd be right. So I don't really remember because I was a baby. But I think for me, when I think about the first memories I have are when I was young and coming for family camp, and and your counselors I had big brothers, but the counselors were so much better than them. And so they became those big brothers and big sisters, and they loved on you in a way that, and because we were so young, right? So I say me and my sister were just 14 months apart. And so we kind of became a unit. But because we were so young, that's not who the camp counselors would normally work with throughout the season. And so I think family camp for them was a time to kind of also show that love to children, like young children, in a different way. And so, yeah, I have great memories of just being in the dining hall, the old dining hall, and, you know, the doors slamming, and doors slammed then too. And, you know, just like running up and sitting at tables with people that, you know, none of my family, or just me and my sister. And so I think those are the kind of formative moments of camp that I still cling to today. But
yeah, that's really cool. I think the fact that you don't remember you don't have a recollection of your very first experience because you're so young is very telling of your family's commitment to Lakeside and their love for Lakeside.
We're a little crazy. When we go big. That's the Bergstrom way, right?
I think even my first summers on staff, where I was the day camp coordinator and I was gone during family camp, I would always hear about the Bergstrom family. And so I'm like, the Bergstroms just must really love Lakeside. And now, you know, last summer was my first experience really with anybody in your family. And so I was like,
sorry.
I get it. Like, oh, no.
Oh, we are a unique group. That is true. But yeah.
You're all such special people. And like, I mean that in an endearing way. No, so when I was on day camp and I'd come back, and family camp is such a special time for the staff, the summer staff, because it's such a different experience, and they have they kind of get adopted by some of the family members. And so I would hear all these different stories, and everything I've always heard about the Bergstrom family, and I mean this honestly, has always been super positive and just like a place of love. And so it was a really cool thing to finally be like, I know the Bergstroms.
Oh, I know them now.
You're
not
like,
just like some random people.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now many years later, you are not a member anymore. How did you end up becoming a member of the board?
I got a call, or I got an email, and it asked. And so yeah, I mean, that was really it. It was the board members had sent me an email, and the committee that does I can't remember. I'm terrible with names of committees, but nominating committee. That's it. The nominating committee. I got an email from them, and just asking if it would be something I'd consider. And I took some time actually to talk to my husband. I've never done a board of directors sort of thing before, so this was going to be a brand new experience for me. I knew that it would require some time going to Iowa, as we do live in outside of the Twin Cities in Minnesota, but as my husband and I kind of chatted about it and talked about it, it came to the point where it was never about not loving Lakeside enough to want to do it or to be present to that. It was a little bit more about just like, having the time or wanting to give that commitment. Because if I do make a commitment, I try very, very hard. There's always circumstances, but try very, very hard to offer as much as I can in that. And we realized that I work only part-time here at the church, and which is a beautiful thing. Don't want it to change, but our boys will be going to school this fall. Hopefully now. At the time, it was going to be like normal school. Now we don't really know what that's going to look like. Sorry, Lakes. But anyway, they're supposed to be going to school all the time. So I was going to have some more hours and some more free time. And as you've said, Lakeside is a dear place in my heart as well as my family's. And it, in a lot of ways, Lakeside for me is home. And I think when people ask me like, where are you from? I grew up in a lot of different places. My dad, we moved as a pastor, which isn't always the case, but it was for us. And so I say Iowa is my home, and I graduated from New Hampton High School, but I think when I think about home and what does home look like, it's Lakeside. That was the place through all of my growing up that we went to all the time. And the place and the feeling of that was home for us. So thinking about that and wanting to be creative about what that was going to look like as we move further into the 21st century, like it just, outside ministry, outdoor ministry, camp, it all starting to happen to look different. And I get that, and it's not going to be the same as what I had growing up, and it can't be. Like, it's just, we don't go backwards, we can only go forwards. And so wanting to help shape that and be engaged in that was just important to me. And so, yeah, we decided that it was something that I could do, and so I said yes, and away we went. I don't think they had like extra nominees. Like, that's not really how they work. So, you know. You don't have to like really get voted in. It's like you show up and yeah, it happens. So,
so it's kind of a new thing for you, but based on your time on the board, what does a board member do? What's your role at camp?
Yeah, that's a real fun. That we're learning that one together. I'm still in the learning process of that, and with the COVID-19 and the changes that happened at camp this year. I mean, I think there's so much of that that's in the air. I think the role in a lot of ways is around direction and is around that macro framework of and holding that mission of camp and holding the and again, by the way, if I'm all wrong and the board comes back at me and says that's not our job, that's super fine, and I'm okay with that too. So like that's not what we're supposed to be doing. Totally appropriate. But yeah, I think for me, what I'm experiencing on the board as part of our task is to hold the macro, the wider understanding of church and work and relationships, and help direct that with prayer and consideration, and I with a lot of different people with a lot of different perspectives, which I think is a nice thing about our board. And then in real honest, authentic conversation with Brittany and you and Ranger Z, like with the staff, with the people who are there year round, who know the intimacy of camp, which even I don't know as a camper. I don't know that the intimacy to hold that in tension and with grace as we look at this broader, much wider shift in our society and what camps are and what they are for people. So being able to help hold that for the staff and for the camp organization. And again, that might all be wrong. And that's not what I'm supposed to do. So then I'll change and adapt, and that'll be fine. So.
I love that. No, but I would have to agree. Like, I think the board a lot of times is looking at like the big picture and our mission and how we can fulfill that. And the year-round staff like myself are more so the ones who implement it.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think it is really important to have a diverse group of people on the board who have different experiences. So I love that you've noticed that.
It's kind of hard not to, but yeah. You're not a monolithic group, which is important. And I think that it's really nice that I think the board and the nominating committees have done a good job of trying to make sure it's not a monolith. So that's good.
Good. Yeah. So in all of that big picture, what your role looks like, or at least what you think your role looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
What would you say is your favorite part of being on the board?
Well, first, I really like planning, and I like big picture thinking, and I like being creative, and I used to say I like to break things and remake them, but that freaks people out. So what I've been doing now is I like evolution. I like to help change, and I like experimentation, and and that's not always the case for church people. I don't know if you've noticed that, Paige. But that's not always the case, but I actually really enjoy that. I find it energizing and life-giving. And so, I think my favorite thing so far, and again, it's been an awkward year. A lot of learning has been going on for the whole board, and then particularly for those of us who are new, but it's been fun and interesting for me and life-giving to see how the board and the staff and camp as a whole is trying to shift and experiment and move in a different way, to dance a different dance for a different time, and to be okay with that. And I think that's two-sided, right? There's both the experimenting, there's the trying, and then there's the being okay with it. Because sometimes we experiment and try just out of like anxiety and fear, but like trying to find that balance has been a fun thing. And watching like Camp Corner happen, different ways in which the camp's being utilized in terms of space and stuff. And so that's been really fun and interesting. And just like on a totally personal, this has nothing to do with really, I mean, it's just fun for me after 37, 38, God, I'm not even sure how old I am, years of being a camper there and being part of that and growing from from one, to a full adult who brings her own children. It's kind of fun to just see the backside of it. I've never really done that. I've never had any kind of window into that. So thinking about budget and which again, I know I'm a weirdo. I find it kind of fun. Like I find it fascinating and interesting and experimental. And how do we use these resources and steward these resources in a meaningful way, and in a way that we do feel called, that lives into our mission. So yeah, I'm not sure I answered your question. Now that I finished talking, I'm not sure I actually answered the question, but you're welcome.
I think it sounds like you have a lot of things that you enjoy about being on the board, which I don't think is a bad thing.
Okay, good.
And I think it's great that like you love seeing the behind the scenes stuff. And I think that's something that I'm excited about this video, is because a lot of people don't realize that there are people behind the scenes doing this work.
There is actually a board and they actually do things.
Right.
A lot more things this year than I think they've met, a lot more than I think has been normal, but that's been important because of, yeah, the whole world is shifting. So yeah.
Right. Because like when I was a camper here, I only was here for a couple summers, but I had no idea. I mean, I was in middle school. I was old enough to understand that there would be a board and things, but I had no idea, and as a camper, you don't really have a reason for that. But I think that there are a lot of people, even as they get older, they don't realize there is a board, or if they do realize that, they don't know what they do. And so I just thought this was
I have to be honest, I'm still trying to figure out, I mean, like all these nonprofits, not just the camp, but like so many nonprofits have boards. I'm like, but what do they do? Like, what's their job? So it's been a fun thing to get, to learn about from this perspective. And then it'll be fun to I will find it fun to then take those learnings and apply it to other boards and expectations that I might have for them. But, that's just the way I roll. So
I think that we think a lot alike and find fun in things that most people don't find fun, like planning and things like that. But
we're like, oh gosh, can we just get to the work? Oh, but the planning's so much more fun. I don't want to implement.
Awesome. So a little more personal about you and your experience at Lakeside. What, where is your favorite place on camp and why?
Okay, so you had sent me the questions before, and so I've been sitting with that question, and I'm going to say this, and I hope that it's okay, but my favorite place on camp is no longer there. So, and actually it wasn't a place, it was a path, and it was the path from the canteen to the old fire, or the old campfire, where the cross is currently, right when you come in the new, that, and I know I'm using new and old, so, but like entrance, and there's the big cross on the stones.
Yeah.
That used to be where, when I was growing up and when I went to camp, all the way I think through high school, that's where the campfire was.
Okay.
And so that path that, leads down to the canteen, that path, has always been there. But when I was young, what happened was we'd have canteen time right before campfire. And then you would all gather at the porch of the old dining hall. And the rule was, as soon as you crossed the fire pond bridge, you had to be quiet. And you walked in silence from there up into that campfire. And it was set in the middle of, a field, like, that space there with all the weeds, just seems like weeds, really tall weeds and field. And you couldn't really hear the water. It was much more like kind of a, you couldn't see the water. It was, it was very isolating, which I loved. And that path, it was walking that path from this chaotic, fun, high energy, canteen time. We'd sing songs down there and just like goof around. And then, watching, 50 14-year-olds silence themselves within 5 minutes of that and walk in silence into that isolation, but together. I don't know, there was always something really powerful about that for me. So the place is still technically there, but it looks different, and that's fine, and that's a good thing. And I think the new changes have been really important to camp and to camp expanding. So when I'm longing for that, when I am at camp and I'm longing for that, what I tend to do is I do tend to go to that field with the Stations of the Cross. Is that right?
Yeah, the prayer labyrinth.
Yes, the prayer labyrinth. That's it. What's it called?
There are Stations of the Cross there, so you weren't wrong.
Okay, good. I'm like, oh gosh, what's it called? But that prayer labyrinth, and oftentimes in the evening, I'll find myself kind of gravitating towards that space because it has that same sort of ambiance as I remember. So.
Oh, that's so cool. I know you were like a little hesitant about sharing your favorite place because it's not there anymore, but I love hearing about how camp used to be. And
yeah.
I think it's important to like recognize that change has happened.
Yeah, and it's not bad. And I think that's the hard part sometimes, right? That when that's why I'm always cautious, because I don't want it to be like, oh, I wish we still had it this way. Well, it wouldn't feel that way anyway, because I'm 38, not, like, it doesn't feel like that when you're 38 with 2 5-year-olds. They're never quiet. Like, it's just the place or the way it was set up. It was who I was and my age and that experience, collective experience. And those you don't get back. None of us do. But we get to hold them, and they still have value for exactly what they were. So.
Right. I love the kind of symmetry of chaos going to worship, and that kind of reminds me of our world sometimes. It's just like the chaos, and maybe for me, like where I find that time to where everything goes silent is at camp. And so maybe not that's in that specific way or that specific place, but I think it's really cool to be able to see that that's something that's held true throughout the years, is that life is chaotic and camp is chaotic even sometimes, but it's also a place where we can find peace with God. And so I think that's so cool.
I think, and I think that's really true for a lot of people still at camp, where all of the voices of our society, all the voices that come after us all day, every day, they can all fall away there. So even if camp is chaotic itself, it's the lessening and the quieting or the dimming of all those other voices for that amount of time. And you can be present to this place and this people, and to God in the midst of that. Cause it feels wrong to like carry that across the like entrance, right? Like, I can't carry all that baggage, like leave that out there. That stays out there. I just, you come in and it's about being willing to be, like that emptied cup, right? Like, there's a prayer I just used it the other day about like, only a hollowed out place can be filled up, and camp is really great at filling, but you do have to hollow it out. Like, you have to empty out all that other stuff in order for it to be full.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, got like goosebumps.
Oh, well, you're welcome. That wasn't me. That was like a old Jesuit priest prayer, not mine, just to be clear. That wasn't my prayer. Where credit's due.
So another kind of personal favorite,
Mhm.
what would you say is your favorite memory of Lakeside? And I'm sure that's going to be a hard one to answer too.
Okay, I'm gonna give you a funny memory of Lakeside. This is a story from when me and my sister were there, and we were. It must have been. I think it was like the night. It was at 80. No, it was like 93, maybe. There was a big flood sometime in Iowa around that time. And this is a silly story. So the waterfront was flooded. So what we were able to do was still have canoes and paddle boats. And so the people who were working at the waterfront, the counselors, would put you in a canoe, and so you know where there's the waterfront, and then there's like that bridge that goes into the bottom field, that low field, right? Like that was all still covered. So you would meet them at the end of that field. They would put you in a canoe, and then they would walk you over that section where that bridge is. And then, I mean, because literally the waterfront was like this. I mean, you can't see. It was deep. It was deep. Okay, so that's like the setting of this. Well, every year, most of the time, we would run some sort of like a drill, right? Like an emergency drill. So the waterfront director, who I can't remember who it was, I'm sure Hattie would be able to tell you. Waterfront director Hattie was down there one day for afternoon time, and he asked her if she would fall out of her boat, and then they were gonna ring the bell down there, right, as like this emergency drill. She's like, okay, fine, I can fall out of the boat, that's fine. So she does this. They ring the bell, except the problem is that the waterfront director didn't tell everybody, like all the staff, that this was happening, that it was a joke, like that it was like not a joke, but that it was a drill. So half of the staff thought Hattie was drowning. And so they're like ringing this bell like a crazy person. And then basically all over camp is like this rumor that Hattie is drowning. My one brother, Jesse, maybe was there, or we had some friends. And so they were all upset, and we were all going to the canteen. It's like, oh my God, is Hattie okay? Is Hattie okay? Did she drown? What happened? And like, she couldn't get out of the boat. She actually, like, she was supposed to tip it. She was with a friend, and she couldn't get it tipped because she wasn't supposed to tell anybody. She couldn't get it tipped. So eventually she just stood up and like fell out, like on purpose. It was just like the most ridiculous, like, a series of unfortunate events in terms of like the anxiety for the camp staff, as well as as the campers. So in one way it was perfect as a drill because it really felt real for people. But yeah, it wasn't. And so like, it was kind of it was what was talked about. It was like the gossip, the camp gossip for the rest of the week of Patty falling out and getting drowned on like, this much water over the waterfront. So, but yeah, I don't know if that's my favorite memory, but it's one. Okay, here's another really funny one though. Okay, I have some funny memories. One year, so I was in high school. We must have been in high school or late middle school, and we did the prodigal son. And it was, a mixed group of boys and girls. It must have been high school. And we were in a group together. And these are people that we've known for years, right? Like, we've been going to the same camp. We've been making sure we go to the same camp, even though we're from different places. Like, this is a group of people who know each other. So we reenact the prodigal son. So yours truly got to be the prodigal son. I make a very good boy, still do to this day. So I got to be the prodigal son, but so we're doing this, right? And everybody has all these different roles, and a couple of guys were like the sheep, or not the sheep, but the pigs, and you have the father and you have the brother. And so I'm like getting, I'm walking around, and I go to the pigs, and they're, on their all fours, and they're eating out of their trough. They started biting my legs. So, and we're recording this. This is like right when like this whole cool, like, we'll take video of it and put it all together. That's how old I am. Like, that was like really like new and awesome. Like, we're going to be cool, like techie people. And these guys are biting my legs. Like, they're like, we're so hungry. Oh my gosh. And like, and then one of them stood behind me, and I fell over on top of him. And this whole thing is like getting recorded and becomes like the end thing of, on the last day when everybody gets to get the last night, and we do a big, we always did like a talent show or something like that. And so they were putting all of these videos together, each day's story, and then they were going to play them all together. But yeah, I'll never forget that, getting my legs bit by teenagers teenage boys who just thought it was funny. But those are the kind of memories I have from camp. Yeah, good time.
Those are such like classic like mishaps that happen at camp.
Oh man, yeah.
That's funny. Maybe a little more serious, but again, personal question. How has Lakeside affected your faith?
I think I find that a hard question to answer because it's always been part of my faith. I know many people have the experience of finding God at camp and like for the first time and really being able to kind of enter into that relationship on a more personal level. And I there's a part of me that really resonates with that, but then there's a part of me that, you know, it's just always been, and it's always been really spirit filled for me. I think when I think about the long journey of my faith, which is only, as I've said, 38 years, but for that journey, again, camp becomes that place that I go back to time and time again, right? Like that physical, geographical space, but also the spiritual and internal space as well. I had this summer, I've been doing songs that preach for our summer sermon series. And so we've been taking hymns and, you know, kind of learning about them and then like, what is the gospel within them? And I had a conversation today with my accompanist, and she was saying, talking about her mother and aunt who, as they aged, kind of like lost a lot of things. But even in the end, when they could do nothing else, they could sing hymns and they would hum and know the words. And I was thinking about that. I'm like, oh, I wonder what hymns that would be for me. And it wouldn't be hymns. It'd be camp. Up above my head and Jesus, thou art the holy, and these things that in my lowest and best moments come to me. And so I think in terms of my faith, that is the rock upon which it stands in a lot of ways. I know it was supposed to be Peter, but well, that's the church. That's fine. It's not faith. But I can't imagine having the faith I have without having the experience of camp for all these years, and getting to know so many different people and their faiths through it. I mean, in some of those conversations I remember having at high school, in the high school camp that we attended, I mean, I think we threw our counselors for some serious loops because it was, you know, again, 7 to 10 people who've been having these conversations for years, and, you know, they really went places. And that was that beginning of, or continuation at least, of questions and doubt and working it out and working out faith and how we live it. Because that's not easy. No matter what anybody tells you, living out faith is never easy. And it is a journey, and it's a lot of wrestling. And that was a safe place for me to start that. And has continued to be a safe place as a family camper with a group of families that, man, they knew me when I was born, and now I'm wrestling with them. Sometimes they like it, sometimes they don't. Faith questions and living out our faith now as adults, and but it is safe, and because we have that depth of relationship, we can talk about things that very few groups of that kind of intergenerational groupings, that intergenerational, spectrum would be able to have in this day and age, because we have siloed so much. So, yeah, I honestly, I can't imagine my faith without it. So I don't really know what to say about it. It's that thing that's just always been.
Yeah. Yeah.
For not knowing what to say about it, I sure talked a lot though, didn't I?
No, I think it's interesting though. And I love that, like, you mentioned the conversations and the people, and how all that connects, because I think that our relationships with others in and out of Christian communities.
Right. Yeah.
Faith. And I think it's a big part of Lakeside too, is building those relationships with people, whether it's in one summer or from year to year to year, and in your case, a lifetime.
Right. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. There's safety in a depth of relationship. There's a safety to disagree and to be honest about that and to wrestle with that kind of stuff when there's a depth. And that's in many ways what Lakeside has given to me. So.
Very cool. Do you have any final words that you'd like to share with camper families, donors, staff, or partner, anybody who has a relationship with Lakeside, something that you'd like to say?
Camp is great. No, I mean, it is great. That is true. That is true. I go every year. This year is a little different, again, COVID, but every year I go on a silent retreat. And I think, and the place that I go is a big space, kind of like camp. I mean, camp is not silent in any way, shape, or form, to be clear. But I think that having that sort of geographical space to connect to whatever, and honestly, I'm going to say this, I'm still a pastor, but I'm going to say it's to whatever that force is in the world, whether you want to call it love, whether you want to call it God, whether you want to call it Mother Nature, but to be able to connect to that force, that thing that pushes and moves through us, to be the best parts of humanity, they're becoming fewer and fewer. And those opportunities are becoming fewer and fewer for all of us. And I think it's something, I know it's something worth preserving. And yes, we have national parks and there's lots of other ways to do this, but there is a particularity about camp for both Christians and non-Christians. There's a particularity about this place and those who have come before and its connection to those who will come after as well, that you don't find in a lot of places. And they do it on a shoestring budget. And that's a beautiful thing. I'm gonna actually kind of say it's kind of a beautiful thing. You know, forces creativity, but it is something worth value, and it's worth time, and it's worth energy, and it's worth giving to the next generation on many, many different levels, not just my next generation, not just my kids, not just for my kids, but for other kids who are the same generation as my kids who have never even heard of a camp, who have no idea what a church camp, outdoor camp even sounds like. They only know about like a basketball camp, which are very good too, by the way, not to say they're bad, but it's different. And so I think it's kind of one of those, it's a dying ministry in some ways, in that there are fewer and fewer, but they also are becoming more and more beautiful in so many ways too, and are reaching people in very different ways. And I would just encourage, what was my list? Camper families, donors, staff, as well as any partner congregations and any other kind of partners to Lakeside, ministry partners, that it is a place to continue to worth investing, whether that's in time or resources or even just word of mouth. I think all of those things, it's worth that. In God's ministry in the world and seeing God in the beauty of the natural world is worth all of that. So.
Well, I like to end all of my interviews with a fun question. Would you rather be a doorknob or a blade of grass, and why?
Well, in post-COVID, I definitely a blade of grass, because then I won't be transmitting diseases to anybody. Also, I kind of love the collectiveness of the blade of grass, right? Like, you're not just a blade all by yourself. Like, you're really connected to all these other things and to all these other blades of grass and part of a lawn or sea of grass. You know, you'd have to get trimmed every once in a while, but I do that anyway. I like my hair short, so that's not unusual. And I also love the idea of like growing. I think for me, it's also the biological piece of that, right? Like that it's actual nature. It's like nature. It's that natural kind of, you have life and you get to rise towards the sun and I kind of love that idea. So yeah, and doorknobs right now is just kind of a bad choice. Doorknobs are like dangerous. Every time I come to my office, I take out a wipe and like do all the doorknobs like as my first way through. So like all right now, I'm like all that happens to a doorknob is it gets cleaned with like antibacterial wipes. So yeah.
I think that is the most in-depth answer I've ever had to that question.
By the way, I could come up with a whole good reason, but in the back of my brain, I am now thinking about like, well, why would it be good to be a doorknob? You get to be like the thing of access to a new room. I have a whole thing, but I'm gonna stop talking now. But yes, you're welcome.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I have to say though, everybody that I've interviewed so far and asked that question to has said a blade of grass. And I don't know if it's because we're camp people or or if it's because of COVID and people are like, ooh, doorknobs.
Doorknobs.
But interesting. It's kind of like this.
Too many people touching doorknobs right now. Oh man.
Well, thank you again for doing this. It was
You're
fun.
so welcome. This was fun. Thank you, Paige. I appreciate it. So thank you for asking.
Yes, of course.
Thank you again, Hannah, for being with us today and sharing a little bit about you and for all the work you do for our ministry. Next week, we have another special guest. Brittany, our executive director, will be giving us a very fun tie-dye tutorial. Don't miss out. See you then. Bye.